Look around you. Everything seems normal, right? People rushing by, the noise of cars, the laughter without reason, the hurry without direction. But something's wrong. Something we feel, but pretend not to. An invisible weight in the air. A sense that nothing is what it seems, as if the entire world were a stage. And we, the actors who forgot we were acting. I don't know when I realized it. Maybe it was one of those days when everything feels out of place, but no one says a word. You look at the sky and feel that it's not. Right. The colors are the same, but there's a silence behind them, a frequency that doesn't belong to this world. That's when I understood. Reality is a cage, and the worst part is, it was made to feel comfortable. The system is so perfect that it teaches you to be thankful for your own prison. You call the bars your routine, you call exhaustion your purpose, and you work, consume, repeat, one day after another, as if there were merit in surviving the emptiness. But deep down, something stirs. A forgotten part of you begins to scream. And in that scream, the awakening begins. I found out that almost everything we were taught was built to keep things exactly as they are. Religion promises you paradise, but only after death. Politics sells you change, but only if you choose the right side. The economy convinces you that you're worth what you produce, and education molds you to never question. Everything revolves around the same goal, keeping you obedient. And they call that civilization. But what is civilization if not a prison with Wi-Fi? We think we're free because we can choose between brands, between candidates, between screens. But true freedom is something else. It's the power to question the code. And the code was written never to be seen. The ancients knew this. They spoke of invisible forces that govern matter. The Gnostics called the creator of this world the Demiurge, the false god, the grand architect of the prison, a being that feeds on human energy, on our pain, on our fear. And the more humanity suffers, the stronger the system becomes. That's why pain is constant. Wars, disasters, hunger, fear. Everything repeats. Everything returns. Always under new flags, new causes, but the root is the same. Suffering must continue. And what if suffering is the fuel? What if human pain is the energy that keeps everything running? In ancient esoteric texts, there's a word for it: lush, the energy of pure emotion, the food of the entities that dwell in the cracks of reality. And we are the herd. With every fear, every tear, every wave of collective despair, they feed. And then, everything starts again. When I realized that, I felt anger. Anger for having believed, for having lived asleep. And also fear. A fear so deep it seemed to come from somewhere else. Because if the world is a prison, what happens to those who try to escape? Time. It's the invisible jailer. From birth, it brands us like cattle. You have to grow up fast. You have to enjoy it while you're young. You have to hurry before it's too late. But no one says where we're running to. Time is the rope that tightens around humanity's neck, and they call it progress. Every second that passes tears away a piece of who you could have been. The body ages, the soul tires, and haste becomes identity. We learn to measure worth in productivity, not in awareness. And when you try to stop, the world pushes you back, as if resting were a crime, as if thinking too much were dangerous. And maybe it is, because thinking too much makes you see what you weren't meant to see. Time isn't linear. It's an illusion that traps the mind. It makes you believe there's past and future, but it keeps you from living in the now. And it's in that space between seconds that the prison sustains itself. We run, 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 and never arrive. And when you realize it, the clock has already won. Those who saw this paid the price. Socrates was silenced, Giordano Bruno burned, Tesla erased from history. They saw cracks in the wall and the system reacted. It always does. Because an awakened mind is like a spark, and a spark can set the world on fire. I don't know if it's possible to escape, but I know it's possible to see. And seeing is the beginning. Once you see the code, nothing is the same. Faces change, voices change, but you recognize the pattern. Lies have the same smell, fear has the same sound, and the world, no matter how alive it tries to seem, begins to look programmed. That's the moment everything changes. People's laughter sounds fake, promises lose their shine, and you understand, no one really wants to wake up. Because waking up hurts, and most prefer the comfort of the lie. But I can't sleep anymore. And maybe if you've made it this far, neither can you. Because once the truth touches you, it never lets go. It sticks to your soul like a scar. And no matter how much time passes, you'll always remember the moment you realized the world was never what it seemed to be. When you start to see, the world reacts. Not in an obvious way, but subtly. People drift away, doors close, and a strange feeling appears. As if the universe itself were trying to push you back to sleep. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But then I noticed the pattern. Every time I questioned too much, something happened. A problem, an unexpected event, a new fear. It's as if the system has defenses, mechanisms that keep the game running. And the more you understand, the more the game watches you. Reality begins to unravel at the edges. Small glitches, moments when time seems to repeat a gesture, a glance, a phrase. It's subtle, but you feel it. As if the code made a small mistake, a glitch. And that's when you understand. Nothing here is random. Religion, politics, economy, education, they're not separate structures. They're parts of the same body, working in harmony to maintain control. Religion teaches you to obey. Politics makes you choose sides that hate each other, so you never notice that both sides serve the same master. The economy gives you golden chains, so you'll thank your prison. And education, education. It teaches you not to ask questions. Since childhood, you're conditioned to believe that questioning is dangerous. And it is. Because those who ask too many questions start to see too much. Control is invisible. It doesn't need weapons or soldiers. It feeds on routine, on repetition, on the fear of losing the little you have left. People call it adulthood. But it's just the system making you believe that growing up means giving up. When I realized that, I understood why the ancients spoke so much about spiritual imprisonment. It's not a metaphor, it's literal. This world is not what it seems. It's an extraction field. And what's extracted here isn't oil or gold. It's energy. Human energy. The vibration of fear, the heat of despair, the weight of suffering. Every tragedy, every war, every scream isn't wasted. It's harvested. The Gnostic texts called it the food of the archons, entities that live between dimensions, parasites that feed on our densest emotions. They don't need to appear. They simply induce chaos, observe suffering, and feast on the energy we emit. Collective fear is a banquet, anger, a party, despair, the main course. And how do they keep that flow constant? Simple. Just trap humanity in cycles. Cycles of work, war, faith, and death. Suffering renews itself, the energy keeps flowing, and the prison never empties. The perfect game. But what scared me the most was discovering that the cycle doesn't end with death. Death is just the next cog in the machine. The body dies, but consciousness continues. And that's when the system shows itself the most. Ancient texts from various traditions speak of the light that appears right after the last breath. Bright, welcoming, irresistible. They say that this light is the way home. But what if it's the opposite? What if that light is a trap? A funnel that pulls back anyone who tries to escape? The soul, as it approaches the light, forgets who it is, forgets everything, and returns. Is reborn without remembering, without memory, without awareness. Ready to start the game again, work, suffer, die. And then, start over. They call it reincarnation. But what if it's just recycling? Religions call it divine justice, mystics call it karma. But I'm beginning to think karma is just the prison's bookkeeping. A system that convinces you that pain is deserved, so you accept suffering with your head bowed. You suffer because you need to learn. How many times have I heard that? But learn what, if memory is erased each time? Who truly learns, if no one remembers the lessons? It's a perfect, cruel, and brilliant cycle. And those who try to leave rarely return to tell. Some say the way out exists, but requires total awareness at the moment of death. Not following the light, not accepting the voice that calls, just remembering who you are and refusing the invitation. But how can you remember if the system itself erases who you were? That's the question that haunts me every night. Maybe that's why the ancient masters sought awakening in life. They knew that if they waited for death to wake up, it would be too late. And maybe that's why the system does everything it can to keep people distracted. Because a mind awakened before death is a threat. Distractions are the new chains. Screens, promises, consumption. Instant pleasure is the perfect drug. Because while you're satisfied, you don't question. And when you don't question, the system breathes easy. Now everything makes sense. The errors of history, the cycles of war, the feeling of emptiness. None of it is random. It's maintenance. Balance for those who control. Humanity is the herd that produces the energy, and we are conditioned to believe that this is living. And when I realized that, something inside me broke. There's no going back. You can't look at the sky the same way. Because now, every time the wind blows, I wonder, is it just the wind, or someone pulling the strings? After you understand, the silence changes. It stops being empty and becomes dense. It feels like the whole world is whispering all the time, as if trying to hide something inside the sound of the wind, inside the noise of the streets. And you begin to hear, not with your ears but with your soul. And that's when you realize control isn't absolute. There's a crack, small, almost invisible, but it exists. They build fear so you never look inside, because it's inside that the breach lies. What the system fears most isn't rebellion, it's lucidity. Because lucidity breaks the mechanism. It cuts the wire. And when the wire is cut, the cycle begins to fail. Awakening doesn't come as light. It comes as rupture. It's when something inside you collapses and for an instant, everything feels too wrong to be true. But it is. You see the game, the script, the repetitions, the same faces with different names, the recycled promises. It's painful, it's lonely, and no one understands what you feel. But it's there, in that point of collapse, that something begins to be born. The mind tries to resist. It says, go back, forget this, live as before. But you can't anymore. You've tasted the truth and its flavor won't leave your mouth. The truth is bitter but real. And after it, everything else tastes like lies. The ancient traditions called this gnosis, the knowledge that isn't learned, but awakened. It's not about studying, it's about remembering. Because within each of us there's a spark, an ancient memory, a voice that says, you weren't born here. You're just passing through. That voice is the echo of what the system tries to silence, and the more you listen, the more it pulls you out of the illusion. They call it madness, but madness is living asleep. Madness is thinking it's normal to wake up every day to repeat the same suffering and call that life. Madness is obeying without understanding why. So, if opening your eyes means being crazy, so be it. The first step to leaving is refusing fear, because fear is the password of the prison. Everything that controls us does so through it. Fear of losing, fear of failing, fear of dying. But what if death is just another room in the same building? What if the real end is forgetting? I no longer know what exists on the other side. But I know that consciousness is the only key we have, and it can't be bought, asked for, or borrowed. It must be earned. Every time you doubt what you've been told, every time you look at fear and keep walking, every time you choose to feel, even when it hurts. Liberation isn't in churches, ideologies, or sacred books. It's in the moment you understand that no one is coming to save you, that the divine isn't a distant being, but the silent spark that ignites within the chaos. When that flame awakens, the system loses strength. The chains loosen and you begin to see the world as it is. Cold, artificial, but full of cracks. And through those cracks, the light enters. Awakening is lonely, but it spreads, because every mind that frees itself makes the world tremble a little. And that's why the system insists on distracting you, with fear, with anger, with guilt. But none of it works forever. Truth is patient, and it always finds a crack. You don't need to believe me. You just need to look. The world speaks all the time, in coincidences and repetitions and small glitches. You just have to pay attention, because everything that's hidden is right in front of you. The veil was never solid. We just learned not to touch it. Now that you know, the choice is yours. You can return to the comfort of illusion, or keep digging for the truth until the end. But remember, once you awaken, there's no turning back. Ignorance was a blessing, yes, but freedom, even when it hurts, is worth every scar. So if there's still a trace of doubt inside you, let it grow. Doubt is the beginning of consciousness. Questioning is the first act of rebellion, and every awakening begins with a simple question. What if everything I've been taught is a lie? Because maybe it is, and maybe, for that very reason, this is your moment to wake up.